And now for something completely different, as we used to hear in some of those brilliant TV shows from the 1970s and 80s. I, as you know, spent a lot of time in different places, and one of the things I'm doing is letting go of a lot of books in our collection. And I'm going to start with some of these. I have 100 Ladybird books in this particular collection, and I'm just going to run through some of them. And if you're interested, make contact with me via email, nick@nicksturgeonbooks.com. This is a selection of 100, but there are 700 books that I'm going to be letting go of, and I'm just going to run through some of them today for the sake of it. Let's start with things that may be popular to people of a certain age, and some that you won't know at all because maybe you had grown up and your parents had stopped buying you Ladybird books, but these are great maybe for grandchildren as well. Let's start with some of these. Kings and Queens of England, Book 1, part of Series 561, which has 24 titles. Let me move these to one side because we don't need these. Right, so what have we got here? So Kings and Queens of England. It's got a little frontispiece talking about the history. It was 2 shillings and 6pence. It's got the Ladybird logo, Series 561. Look, Stephen Clark had it, and then maybe it went to a younger brother, Jack Clark. But this is first published 1968 by Wills and Hepworth Limited in Loughborough. Loughborough, of course, being the home of Ladybird Books. There is, even these days, a nice little museum dedicated to Ladybird Books in the town of Loughborough. So Kings and Queens of England. The Ladybird Book of Trees. If you want to go out and recognise trees, to be honest, Ladybird Books or something similar is very helpful. Look at these silhouettes of trees. Jack Clark again, must have come from the same family. First published 1963, and an index of trees in the beginning of the book. But a beautiful set of illustrations. And another lovely book. Here's a more modern one, John Wesley, founder of Methodism. 24 pence. Again, Ladybird Books from a series of 45, starting with King Alfred the Great and finishing with Elizabeth Gaskell. Ladybird Books, 1977. Here's another one. Ladybird Natural History. Birds and How They Live. Two and 6, 1966, and a great little book. Going back in time, the first day of the holidays. Missing the Spine. Originally 24 pence. This is from Series 401, and it's Book 13, the first day of the holidays. This belonged to Philip John Plant of Hull. Series 401, The Adventures of Penguins Pen and Gwen, who preferred mischief to the task of shelling peas for Mother Penguin, will delight all young children. Originally 1942, obviously this was reprinted many years later, but a nice little simple book. The illustrations alone are worth framing. Some of you would be interested in just buying these for cutting out the pages and framing, and to be honest, there will be lots of people who will have an interest in buying these, maybe 2 or 3 framed pictures, and selling those on a market to the general public. But remember, the spine's missing. Our Land in the Making, the Norman Conquest to the present day. Jack Clark appears again, 1966, first publication, 2 and 6, and we run through the details of the book. Beautifully illustrated as ever, as were Ladybird Books generically. But again, illustrations that are worthy of framing or simply having these books as keepsakes on your bookshelves. Another selection, the Yellow Book of Bedtime Stories. Was this printed in digital times? Let's think about it. Sorry, decimal times. Stunning illustrations. Okay, so this is going for 1978. The Moth and the Mirror by Charlie Chester. Illustrations by James Hodgson. But there are multiple stories in here with different illustrators. The Yellow Book of Bedtime Stories. On the same theme, let's talk about bedtime. This is an oldie. Look, the spine is damaged. I don't want to surprise anybody with what they end up receiving. Ladybird Books. I can see under here it was sold at 30p, but that has also been marked out by the vendor originally, maybe a bookshop. Education, it says, begins long before a child goes to infant school. There is a Ladybird Talkabout book. It is a book to be used and enjoyed with young children and has been specially planned with the help of qualified nursery school advisors. All the books in this Talkabout series are designed to stimulate conversation between child and adult. And they did. We learnt, we grew up, we spent our childhood with these books. Talk about getting ready for bed. Talk about the picture. Talk about being in bed. A different one, this one, Ladybird Leaders. Let's have a look at what we've got here. I'm just going to adjust the light. Ladybird Leaders. This is a book about mountains. It has the spine. And this has the old sticker price stamped out with black ink. And actually, there's quite a groove there where it's been pressed. And the new price, the decimal price of 30p. My guess is that this carried one of the 2 and 6 prices prior. I can't quite see it through there because the ink is completely dark. 34 books in this in this series 737, from water, ducks and swans, man in the air, lions and tigers, and the first few books to polar regions, mountains and forests. So this is book 33, Forests. Some of the world's mountains. To teachers and parents how to use the book. Illustrations by Gerald Whitcomb, Ladybird Books, 1977. Indians of the Western Plains. A 30p switch from old currency to decimal currency. 3 books in the series, Pirates, Cowboys and Indians. Oh my goodness. And this one comes with, look, I don't think I've ever noticed this. I've had this collection a long time. But the Blue Peter cats, Jack and Jill. The Blue Peter dog, Petra. Frida the tortoise. And of course, if you remember the series like I do as a kid, Shep, owned very proudly by John Noakes. I want to say, get down, Shep. So, and again, listen, this is nostalgia. This is a collection of 100 books that will sit very comfortably on any shelf and fill you with remembrance of things that you enjoyed as a kid. Another book, Life in New Testament Times. 15p, so early decimal book in terms of pricing. This one, how beautiful is this? Look, presented to Peter Morley on promotion to the junior department of the Central Methodist Sunday School, October 1972. How beautiful. And this one, first published 1968. From the Ladybird Adventure series, the story of Captain Cook. At the time that this was printed, 27 titles. And where is Captain Cook on here? Captain Cook is book 6, the story of Captain Cook. But this is interesting again. Look at this. This is the switch from old money to decimal money, 2 and 6 to 12.5 pence. The Voyages of Captain Cook. Ironically, yesterday I put up a little short of the English flag over Whitby Harbour with the church in the background. And of course, Captain Cook was apprenticed at Whitby, but began his time in the Navy, or getting ready for the Navy, living in Staithes, just up the coast from Whitby. But this one, first published 1958, Captain Cook. And there are so many books here. I've got Talking Rhymes. I've got The Beach, Baby Animals, a modern series, look, The Transformers, Megatron's Fight for Power, 75 pence originally, and there were 2 books in this series, Autobots Lightning Strike and Megatron's Fight for Power. And here is Autobots Fight Back. Let's step back in time again. The Story of Our Churches and Cathedrals from the Ladybird Achievements book. 13 books in this series, series 601. And here we're looking at book number 8, Churches and Cathedrals. The ground plan of a village church. When I was pre-teens, my father used to love going to churches to do brass rubbing. So I'd go there with him sometimes with the black paper and the gold or the silver waxed crayons. And in those days, it was a very easy habit and a very practical habit to sit and do such things, and in discussion with the priest or the readers working in the church, the rectors, you could go and take the brass rubbings. Then brass rubbings started to disappear and be taken from churches, but it was very much something I enjoyed. Look at that, Norman walls and towers. The story of our churches and cathedrals. Another copy of Our Land in the Making. This one, The Zoo. Again, the spine is missing. It's been taken off. 18 pence, so a decimal book from the decimal age. This belonged to Helen Green. There's a loose page there, and it's been taped back in. But Helen Green, a natural history book, Animals and How They Live. Only 2 in the series, Plants and How They Grow and Animals How They Live, series 651. Children of the Bible, the story of Joseph, this one still with the binding, with the dust jacket on it. The story of Joseph, a Ladybird book. 2 and 6. This has obviously changed hands in second-hand bookshops over the years. Belonged to New Park St John's Sunday School. This one doesn't have a print date in it. Not all books do. But here we go, the story of Joseph. In a modern version, without the... If you look at this, this has got the old cover there. But beautiful that it has the jacket cover. The Parable of the Sower, 40 pence, 7 in the series. Again, Philip John Plant from Hull. Published in 1977. Insects and Small Animals. The Little Lord Jesus. I'm going to put that there so we can see it. Mervyn Mouse, my goodness, I remember this one. The family and friends, Eloise and brother. These charming and amusing stories about Mervyn Mouse are written in rhyme for younger children. When Mervyn loses his tail, his mother replaces it with a rubber band, and his adventures begin. In Mervyn Swims the Channel, his tail causes Mervyn a lot of trouble until he is rescued by some French mice. Mervyn was a country mouse who lived on old Pete's farm. He nibbled at the corn all day and caused a lot of harm. Starting school. Talk about shopping. Dennis the Dragon finds a new job. Magnets and electricity. I'm going to put that one there. How to make flying models. Picture reading. Meg and Mog. Going into hospital. Story time for 3-year-olds. Scooby-Doo. Anybody remember Scooby-Doo on their collection of Ladybird books? Lions and Tigers. Toad's Christmas Party. Charles Dickens. 24 pence in a series of Ladybird History 561. Charles Dickens. Our Land in the Making, Earliest Times to the Norman Conquest. Richard the Lionheart, a Ladybird book. Baby's First Book. Still with a childhood theme, Telling the Time. We've already had one called Talk About Holidays. This is an older version. Talk About Holidays. Decimal, 24 pence. Jesus the Helper. Let's talk about starting school. Sir Walter Raleigh, An Adventure from History. Ladybird Books, 2 and 6, Series 561. Oh, I remember this one. What to Look For Inside a Church. Again, going back to childhood and all the memories of being in church, being in Sunday school, growing up inside a weekend church community. Series 649, What to Look For Inside a Church. The Story of Our Rocks and Minerals. A Ladybird Book, Your Body. Tricks and Magic. My younger son used to love this book. Tricks and Magic, a Ladybird book, Series 633. Lives of the Great Composers, Book 2. The Great Composers, Book 1. I think we all had this in our collection at school. Florence Nightingale. The Lord's Prayer and Other Prayers for Children. Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales. Goodness me. I think this is the most modern Ladybird book I've got. Discovering Cathedrals. Let's see if we have a date in this one. Yes, 1985. First came out. This edition, 1988. So that is, I think, my most modern book in this collection. Ladybird Horror Classics, The Mummy. Disney, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Toy Story. 3 Billy Goats Gruff. The Pilgrim Fathers. How long does this one go back in time? 1972 by Dugard Peach with illustrations by John Kenny. Everyone, it says, has heard of the Pilgrim Fathers, but who were they? This book tells their story, how men, women and children were crowded in a little wooden ship for more than 9 weeks, daring the winter storms of the Atlantic to seek freedom in an unknown land, enduring near starvation and bitter weather to found a settlement which later grew and spread to become the United States of America. Kings and Queens, Book 2, How It Works, The Locomotive. Baby Jesus. Jesus calls his disciples. The Countryside Notebook. I remember this as TV programs started to talk more about nature and we saw more nature documentaries. This one from 1981, Countryside Notebook, spin that page back, written by Pamela Whitehead with photographs by Michael Whitehead. So still not the most recent one. The most recent one was what we looked at earlier from 1988. Let's talk about Bedtime, Dinosaurs, The Story of Football, Homes, Read It Yourself, Hansel and Gretel, Things We Like, Beauty and the Beast, Topsy and Tim, Jeremy's Ride, Prince Charles, Talk About Animals, Talk About Clothes, Dick Whittington, ABC Ladybird, The Red Book of Bedtime Stories, Busy Little Postman, A Book of Poetry, All in a Day, poems selected by K. Webb, The Tigger Movie, Return to Neverland, another book about trains, Under the Ground, Understanding Numbers, The Blue Book of Bedtime Stories, Our Friends. Now, is this man a fisherman? But let's have a look. Keywords, what they are and how they're used. Some of the words in the English language are used much more frequently than others. Research shows that 12 of these keywords make up 1/4 of all those we read and write. 100 of them form half, and 300 about 3/4 of the total number of words found in juvenile reading. Reading skill is accelerated if these important words are learned early and in a pleasant way. 1964. Here is a girl who lives on a farm. She is Pam and lives on this big farm with her mummy and daddy. Pam likes to live here. And you recognise these two, Peter and Jane. Jane is going to have some milk and Pam gives Peter some cakes. She talks to the brother and sister about the farm. My goodness, the role of Peter and Jane books in our childhood was staggering. Things We Do, the Ladybird Keywords Reading Scheme. This book once belonged to Catherine Green. A gift from the Sir Brian and Sir George Cook Foundations, Bentley School, April 1964. And this book was published in 1964. So within a short period from publication by Ladybird in Loughborough, it was in the library of the Bentley School. Peter and Jane are at home. Peter wants to make a car to play with. He wants to make a car like Daddy's. This is more than nostalgia. This is a part of middle-class English culture from 60 years ago. Read It Yourself, Jack and the Beanstalk. And one more, and then we've run through 100 books. The Silver Arrow, a Ladybird Robin Hood adventure. This one, again, with its original dust jacket or dust cover. The Silver Arrow, a Ladybird Robin Hood adventure. Series 549, The Silver Arrow, a story by Max Kester, illustrated by John Kenny. The Sheriff of Nottingham sat in the great hall of Nottingham Castle, biting his nails. He was very angry. He had never been in such a rage before. This outlaw Robin Hood must be captured, he shouted, and banged the table so hard that the dishes sprang into the air. So, a little collection of 100 of my Ladybird books. They are up for sale now. I will put them on Facebook Marketplace, but I also want to make them available to yourselves just reach out if you're interested. I'll put the pricing details in the description. Come and collect them from me in West Yorkshire, or we can find out what it would cost to ship them securely to you via courier. Thanks for watching.